Since the last video, a lot has happened. I got some clients through door knocking, I held a couple open houses, and I even totally skipped out on Brokers Open. To begin with, I was able to keep on consistently door knocking. So far, primarily when I've been door knocking, I've been targeting teardown or falling apart properties, as these sellers are more likely to sell. After some consistent door knocking, I was able to find a seller that was looking to sell their falling apart home. At that point, all I needed to do was find a buyer for the property. So what I did is I went around and tried to find some development sites. And then I would look up those development sites on the MLS, find out the owners, and then give them a call. Doing this, I was able to find a buyer who wanted to see the home. So I scheduled my first ever showing of a property. This is the point where everything took a turn and kind of went crazy. I made a ton of mistakes and I learned a lot. Showing the property, the seller and the buyer happened to me. I didn't think that this would be such a big issue until it actually happened. Essentially what happened is that the buyer was sticking to their price and the seller was sticking to their price, and they wouldn't budge, which pretty much ruined all chances for any actual negotiation to take place. Essentially, I accidentally created a scenario where nobody would win. The main takeaway here is to never, ever let buyers and sellers meet together under any circumstances. Another thing I learned is that if I can find teardown properties that are looking to sell at a reasonable price, I know for a fact that I can find a buyer, namely a developer or a flipper, in no time. The main thing is I just have to be consistent in my seller and buyer finding efforts. I do plan to continue finding a buyer for the property in question, but I also want to devote some of my efforts into finding more teardown properties that are looking to sell. Other than that, I have totally abandoned my inventory learning. By that, I mean due to my choices on time allocation, I have totally neglected keeping up with the current inventory. On top of that, I totally skipped out on the most recent Brokers Open due to time reasons. I know some of the biggest agents told me to learn the inventory, but honestly, I can't bring myself to use up hours daily learning the new inventory and keeping up with the old. On top of this, going to a Brokers Open takes more than 3 hours on the day that it is. The net time spent in a week of keeping up with the inventory is north of 12 hours. I just have a strong feeling that if this time was spent more to generating leads or tending to the ones I currently have, it would be far more productive. I may be totally wrong. This could be the stupidest decision ever, but I feel like it's the right thing to do, especially since currently, not even once have I ever used any of the information I learned during inventory noting in a practical interaction. But I also do take into account I haven't been doing this for very long, and that potentially in the future I could realize that I was totally incorrect and that I need to learn it. Aside from this, I've held a couple open houses and I've had some pretty interesting results and have learned a lot about the process. The first open house I ever held was with another team member. Although I learned a lot from discussing with the team member, the amount of people that actually arrived at the open house was very few. I wanted this to never be the case when I was alone, so I made it a plan to go and door knock the area before the open house. Now here is where the funniest part begins. When I was planning to go door knock the condo complex, I had realized there's a special type of lockbox that held the keys. This special lockbox requires you to pay a monthly fee and an installment fee. Of course, you know me, I would never stoop to such a low level as to pay a monthly fee for a lockbox that I would probably never use again. So I got a team member who was paying it to agree to help me open it on the day of the open house. But that still left the day before where I had to door knock. I decided I didn't need to get into the unit specifically, just the building. So I could just wait outside until somebody opened the door and then I could go in. This is exactly what I was gonna do until when I was about to leave, my car didn't start. By the time the problem was fixed, I wasn't left with much time to door knock. But either way, I still went out there. Unfortunately, I waited there for quite a while and nobody opened the door. I thought the best option at that point would be to come back the next day a few hours early so that I could get the keys and then I could just go door knock and then hold the open house. So the plan was set. On the day of the open house, I came in a few hours early and then me and my team member probably sat there for about an hour and 30 minutes just trying to figure out how to get the lockbox open. We were trying everything under the sun to get the app and the lockbox to connect. Nothing was working, but finally, about 30 to 40 minutes just before the open house was going to start, we finally got it open and then set up the open house. And at this point, I was contemplating what I was supposed to do. On one hand, I had to hold the open house, and on the other, I needed to door knock to bring people in. The strategy I came up with was whenever things got slow, I would run out as fast as possible and knock part of the floor and hopefully come back in time before somebody explores the unit by themselves. The strategy worked extremely well, and I was able to see about 13 parties of people in the open house period. I also decided to extend the hours of the open house by 1 hour on each side. So instead of 2 to 5, it was 1 to 6. If I keep this up consistently, I'm sure, without a doubt, that I will be able to get some sort of transaction soon. Anyway, aside from all that, I accomplished my objective of holding open houses and of consistently doing lead generation. Unfortunately, I totally failed my objective of keeping up with the inventory. As for the coming few weeks, you better believe that my goals are to get more leads and tend to the ones I currently have in a totally awesome way.